it is Jo from Minerva, and today we're adding to our Fabric Masterclass series where we look at a different type of fabric and we take a look at how we're going to sew it, cut it, what things we can make with it, and a little bit of fabric inspiration. If we know a little bit more about a fabric, then it might add to our list of fabrics that we can choose to make our own projects. This series aims to run alongside our fabric guide. It's a definitive guide to different fabric types, and I'll show you a little bit more inside that folder towards the end of the video. Today I'm looking at a fabric called Bengaline, which is a fabric for making workwear. It's really durable. It's got a stretch but in a particular direction, so we're going to make sure that we use the fabric to the best of our ability. I'm going to be making some trousers today with my Bengaline, so I'm not going to show you those yet. I'm going to show you how I use the fabric first, but I am wearing Minerva exclusive fabric called Pandora's Box, and this is a viscose challis, so you can see that this fabric has a really draping hand. It makes it really ideal for the Victoria blouse pattern where there is the big centre pleat at the front, and the grown on sleeve means that the draping fabric can collapse there in the undersleeve and give a really floaty silhouette. I wanted to show you this fabric today because the fabric here, this Bengaline, has a really different structure, and it's good to compare and see the hand of different fabrics. You can see the structure of the Bengaline. It can stand up on its own. It's quite a noisy fabric because it's got a really smooth finish. Bengaline is a fabric that originates from Bengal in India. It used to be made in silk, and it's made with a fine cross weave when it's made. So you'll see when you look at it really close up, and I don't even think I can show you on the camera, it's got very fine ribs in it. But it makes it really durable, and it also gives the fabric some mechanical movement, so it's got a little bit of stretch in it. That stretch is enhanced with some elastane content. So this one that I'm showing you today is from the Minerva core range. Its composition is around 70% viscose, 20% nylon and about 3% elastane. It means that the fabric is really great for workwear, especially if you sit down a lot. It's really comfortable to wear. It's fabulous for trousers, especially if you want a fitted slim pair of trousers that fit through your waist and your hips and your bottom. You'll get a really smooth fit. You can also make wider leg trousers so that they will hold the shape at the bottom so they won't collapse. So then you get a really smart, polished pair of work trousers. Because of the weave, the fabric does fray a little, so you can see from where I pre-washed it here, I'm getting some fraying on the edges, so that will make me think about which finishing technique I'm going to use in my project. Bengalines aren't always this composition, so you get ones made of different fibres, so sometimes you might get a cotton mixed with a polyester, or you might get a viscose mixed with a nylon. The nylon will give it durability. The fabric's very breathable, so even though you're wearing something close fitting, it doesn't feel clammy or it doesn't stick to your skin. It's really great for summer wear too. I'm using it today to make a pair of trousers, but I think this fabric is the ideal choice if you've just mastered a jeans pattern but you want a summer weight or a lighter weight pair of jeans, because it will do all the same features, belt loops, button fly, pocket handling, all of that kind of thing, but you'll get an overall lighter pair of jeans instead of using a denim fabric. Although the fabric is lightweight, it is opaque, so I'm using a white today for making a pair of trousers. I'm hoping that I won't have any issues. I can see by putting my hand through, I'm not seeing any sort of peachy colour coming through, so I'm going to get an opaque finish on the back of my trousers. The things to watch out for with this fabric are pressing, which I'm going to take a look at a bit later in the video, and how you cut your fabric. Today I'm making the Narcissus trousers by Deer and Doe. This pattern is only available in PDF. At the time of recording, I think there's a few copies, paper copies left on our website. I'll put the link below. I'll link all the products that I use below so that you can go and take a look at those afterwards. I'm going to head over to the cutting table. I'm going to cut out my trousers and I'm going to show you where the difference is when you cut on Bengaline fabric. I haven't pressed my fabric yet because I'm still flapping it around a little bit, but I want to show you that if I put the fabric selvage to selvage, so here's the fold, and here is this selvage edge, and you can see it, it's not the same as others, it doesn't quite have that same sort of line because it's a white one I've got here and I have not got a colour going to the edge, but you can just see the little holes along the edge where it's attached to the loom. If I put it selvage to selvage, then my fabric here does not stretch. If I fold it the other way, you will see that now I have lots of stretch. Lots and lots and lots. It's really stretchy. So you need to make sure when you get your fabric that you lay it out on the table so that your piece is going across your body, across your hips, across your waist, across your thighs, across your shoulders, is going with the stretch going across your body. If you cut it the other way, then jackets will have, the back will be too tight, the sleeves will be too tight. You need to make sure that you're getting it the right way. So really you're recreating fabric as you would normally lay it out on your table so that the straight grain runs straight with your pattern pieces, and this is the stretch. That's really important for me because I'm making a pair of fitted trousers. I'm going to go and press my fabric and maybe press my pattern pieces so that everything's nice and flat and accurate for cutting out. This particular Bengaline that I've got today has got a really high viscose content, so it's going to shrink. So I've pre-washed the fabric on 40 degrees because that's how I'm hoping to wash my trousers. There's one thing that Bengaline doesn't like, and that's really hot iron temperatures. So I've changed my iron temperature down to wool so that I can be much more gentle with it. Because of the rib texture and the movability of the fabric, if it's too hot, then you'll press out the stretch and you'll also melt some of the elastane content if your fabric has that. I had a really strong crease there, and just on the wool setting I've managed to press it out really easily. So be careful and treat your Bengaline with heat cautiously. Bengaline doesn't have a right side or a wrong side unless you've got one with a print on, so you can go ahead and pin your pattern pieces on. You can see here my grain line this is the straight grain, and in our case we've turned our fabric round so that this becomes the straight grain. Because of the elastane content, you'll need quite sharp pins, so big thick pins don't really like it, they'll just bounce back off the elastane. Because I'm using a white fabric, then I'm going to mark my darts today with tailor's tacks. I don't want to use carbon paper or any chalks or pens or marks or anything because I don't want to risk marking the fabric. I've made an adjustment here. I've changed the crotch depth. This is an alteration I do on lots of things. So this is my second pair of trousers, so I'm kind of really confident in cutting out all of the pieces. I'm going to carry on cutting out, and then we can take a look at sewing up some of the features in Bengaline. Once you're all cut out, you'll be thinking about sewing your Bengaline. So let's take a look at doing a few test pieces. And I really recommend doing this because I can't tell you one particular thing to do with Bengaline because it really does depend on how much stretch you have in your fabric. I'm finding that a stretch needle is better in my machine, but you will also find that a universal needle works well too. It depends what you're doing. In terms of sewing Bengaline, you'll need to use a 2.5 stitch length because the fabric stretches. It's going to be under a little bit of stress, so if you make it a longer stitch length, when it stretches it will peel open and you will see the stitch lines. I'm going to use a straight stitch And when you test sew for Bengaline, then you need to make sure that you try on both grains of fabric so that you can find the best stitch. This is using a universal needle on a straight stitch at 2.5. Obviously I've used a different colour to show you, but when you stretch open the fabric, you're not revealing lots and lots of stitches. I did find, however, that when I went across the stretchy grain, then I was getting a little bit of rippling with a straight needle. So I'm going to try a stretch needle. But I would say every machine's different. You might find that a stretch needle is fine. You might find a universal needle is fine. And it very much depends on the elastane content of your Bengaline. You might also try a narrow zigzag to get your straight seam line if your Bengaline is really stretchy. That one's going through the fabric better, but I'm still getting a little bit of rippling. This time I loosened off the tension, so I changed my tension of these upper discs here that are in the top of the machine, and I changed it down to 2, and that's reduced the rippling, but it hasn't taken it away. So I'm going to try one more go. That one's better. There's less of this sort of puckering and rippling. It's a much flatter seam. And even though the tension's loose, I'm still getting a good seam line. So those are a few things to try when you're sewing Bengaline. Change your tension, put in a stretch needle, and make sure that you've got a small stitch length. Or it could be that a narrow zigzag gets you a better seam. So they're all worth trying out at the testing stage with some little pieces of Bengaline. If you need to use an interfacing with Bengaline, you've got to be aware of a couple of things. You can't use a really high temperature to put the gluey side on here, but so you will need to use a press cloth, and you'll need to do it quite carefully. So this one has a gluey side, which I've used to stabilize this welt pocket area. We need to make sure that this area, because the fabric is so stretchy, means that I can get the welt pocket on flat, and when I wear it and put my hand in this back pocket, I don't overstretch that area and end up with a baggy pocket. The interfacing that's really good is this one. It's got lines of stay stitching running through it. So in this grain it sort of tears, but in this grain it's absolutely rock solid because of all those lines of stitching. So when I put this interfacing on, I put it with the lines of stay stitching running across that stretchy grain, and it makes that area absolutely rock solid, but it's really nice and light, so it's not thick or stiff. It's just really strong in its construction. So if you're looking for an interfacing to use with Bengaline, this stabilized one is absolutely great, and I'll list it in the products below. If you're putting buttonholes in Bengaline, then you need to put something to stabilize the back because it's stretchy. You'll end up with a ripply buttonhole if you're not careful. So I'm just going to show you where I'm putting the buttonhole. It's on this piece of interfacing. That piece of interfacing was part of my welt pocket area, so I made sure that I just made the interfacing go a little bit further so that I would be able to stabilize the buttonhole. And if you've got options on your machine, you might want to try the stretch buttonhole or the normal buttonhole. It depends. I would definitely try one first in a scrap piece of fabric. When you do a test buttonhole, it's important that you do the test in the same grain as the fabric. So there's no point me trying a buttonhole on that straight grain and saying, oh, that's fantastic, and then when I do it on my trousers, it's actually in that grain. So I'm going to test my buttonhole and see which buttonhole I'm going to choose from my machine. I'll have a choice. You might not have a choice. and I'm going to practice a couple. So I'll put one over here and one over here, and we can see which one looks the best. I've done a couple of sample ones. This one is number 35, which is a normal buttonhole, but I've actually found, because the fabric is so stretchy on that grain, that I got the opportunity to make a stretch buttonhole, which is number 37, and that one is much better. It's not rippling and pulling the fabric so much out of shape. So here that's pulled into quite a sort of curved shape, whereas this one has remained quite flat. So you'll definitely want to test any buttonholes that you make on Bengaline, making sure that you're replicating the stretch position and that you have your interfacing on the back. You can see there the buttonhole is nice and flat. Obviously you're going to get a little bit of rippling where you've got a 3D button in a shape, but you can make a very successful buttonhole as long as you have a practice first. If you want to find out more about different fabric types, because you want to extend the range of fabrics that you sew with, then you can take a look at the Minerva Fabric Guide. It's a definitive and comprehensive guide to fabric fibres and base cloths. So it's not a project book, it's a book all about fabric, and it'll give you lots and lots of knowledge that will help you with online shopping for fabrics. There is some technical information in the front where you will see how fibres are made, so the differences between woven fabric and knit fabric, a little bit about fabric stretch, a little bit about how fabrics are manufactured and made and how that might affect how we cut our fabric. Really interesting information here about fabric weight, which is something we can't feel when we look online. Some information about washing instructions and how to treat your fabric, and things to consider when you buy fabric. The first part goes through lots of different fibre types, and it will tell you the characteristics of fabrics that are made with different fibres. The second part of the book is an alphabetical list of 70 base cloths, and I'm on the Bengaline page at the moment, and you'll get 70 swatches of fabric to put inside your book so that you can have a feel of the fabric and see if it is going to be the sort of fabric that you need for your project. There's also a little bit of pattern inspiration, so you can check out, well, this fabric is good for trousers, it makes tops, it makes collars. Here it's making a fantastic jumpsuit. If you read all the information on Bengaline and you think it might be a fabric that you'd like to explore, then you can use the QR code and that will filter all our fabrics of Bengaline to your page, so you don't have to look through our thousands and thousands of fabrics on our website. You can see all the different fabric types here. Today we've looked at Bengaline. And the folder is complete with lots of inspirational photography. So that is the Minerva Fabric Guide. Okay, so here are the trousers. I absolutely love them. I love them because they're in Bengaline actually. It really is the most perfect trouser fabric because you can get all of the fit on the waist. But it's fitted here across the waist and the hips, but when I'm sitting down it's really comfortable. It still makes small features. So the welt pockets here are all neat and they were able to be pressed, so even though the fabric's stretchy across that stretch grain, it's not stretching out on those features. The interfacing has worked really well. I used that on the waistband as well so that the waistband didn't stretch out. It's still got some stability to hold the trousers. Here's a full length picture because I'm struggling to get full length to the bottom here in my horizontal video frame. I hope I've given you a few ideas for how to use Bengaline. It really is the best trouser fabric that you can get because of that stretch. Absolutely ideal for sitting if you're a wheelchair user or if you sit a lot for work. They are really, really comfortable. The trouser patterns you can use, again, I think I mentioned them before. There's the Lander pants, ginger jeans, the Dawn jeans, the Sasha trousers from Closet Core. I'll list a few trouser patterns below, but do look out for another video where we show you some pattern inspiration for using Bengaline. We would love to see what you have been making, so do head over to Minerva, share your makes there, a quick photograph, a little description of how you've used the fabric. It really does inspire other Minerva makers. Do come back for more of our masterclass series, so we'll be going through some more of those 70 base cloths from the Minerva fabric guide. We're giving you some sewing tips and some inspiration on how to choose that fabric and what to do with it. Thank you very much for watching.